Hello, welcome once again to the Mind series. I'm Dr. Ryan Thompson, and today we'll be talking about part 2 of the ACBs of dyslexia, how to find resources and treatment for an individual with learning disabilities. With me again to share in part 2 of this series is Sherry Titchener, who is the Educational Services Coordinator at Mind Matters Clinic, and we're going to be going through and talking about finding the resources that your child might need for a learning disability. But first of all, some people may not have been here for the first part of the episode, and I kind of want to recap a little bit what we talked about. Learning disabilities, the way we define it, are any significant inefficiency in ability to learn for an individual. So something that is not involving their IQ or their intellectual ability. It's not a matter of their motivation. It's something that is different in their brain-based ability to process information, and with that be able to be successful within the classroom. So anything that can interfere with that, apart from things like vision and hearing problems, anything that has to do with the brain's ability to process the information would qualify within the learning disability range. And there's a variety of different learning disabilities. There's some that involve visual processing problems. There's things that are auditory processing problems. There are things that are limited more to reading, some that are more limited to math skills, and some things that are related to fine motor skills. So there's a wide variety of learning disabilities. So understanding that also means that there's going to be different approaches to treating individuals with learning disabilities, and also understanding that no two children are alike. So you're not going to find, if this child has a learning disability, this one might look different than that one. So you can't by definition just say, oh, I know what learning disability is like. That's when you flip B's and D's, because that's just going to be one type or one form of learning disability. So understanding there's this wide variety of things that are out there, we're also going to understand that there's more than one way that you can address a learning disability. Yet there's going to be some that are much more common than others. So sometimes there's going to be areas or methods that are commonly going to benefit those types of learning disabilities that are the most common. So beyond that, I would like to go ahead and introduce Sherry Titchener to you today. She is our Educational Services Coordinator, and she has extensive experience both in the classroom and in working with individuals with learning disabilities. And she's been able to take on that role here, as we talked about previously. Lots of experience in the classroom, so a lot of kind of hands-on understanding. I get it, I see it, I know there's a need. And then beyond that, you've taken it upon yourself, I know, to get a lot of training along the way. So could you remind us, how is it that you became interested in learning disabilities, and what kind of training you had along the way?
So to recap, I became interested because I found that there were a number of children that I couldn't help enough in my classroom with just the standard tools that I was given, with the standard curriculum. And so I wanted to find other strategies and understand it better, educate myself, and be more aware of what their difficulties might be and get further training. And that was my main motivation. And once I left the classroom, I really wanted to be able to focus on helping kids with learning disabilities, getting the training from Mind Matters, from Kim Thompson, and using the programs that you have available at the clinic that aren't available in the schools, or haven't been available.
Until recently,
haven't
right.
been until recently. And so that was my motivation.
So I know that we've talked before, and I kind of want to expand a little bit on the idea that it really is a brain-based thing. This isn't something that has to do with motivation or IQ specifically. So give me a flavor of the kind of the neuroscience part of it, because I know that's something you're really interested in.
I do. I like learning about that and understanding that, and I think it helps take away some of the stigma if we can understand that just as we all have different hair color and eye color and body types, that our brains are just as unique. And from the time a child is conceived, all the different influences on their development impacts their brain structure. So it can be the mother's health, her nutrition, stress while she was pregnant. It can be conditions that happen during birth or after birth. So some of it happened a long time ago for the child and could be genetic, it could be environmental. And once we understand that, I think parents have an easier time going, oh, it's not that they're not trying, it's not that they're not smart or that they don't care, but there's something going on different in their brains.
So I know that there are things that can happen to a child after they're born or during the process of pregnancy. I also know a lot of times I'll see children who have a learning disability, and as you talk to the parents and I find out more about their history, I'll notice that the father or the mother, gosh, they had trouble with math, they were in special education along the way, they've always had trouble with their reading. So I know there's a big genetic piece there. So is that something that you talk to parents about, that it can be genetic?
Yes. And it seems like a lot of times parents know that because they come in and offer that information. They've noticed that similarity, or perhaps they've read up on it before they've come, but they understand that learning disabilities, and especially dyslexia and the condition of ADHD, are very commonly related genetically. Not that it has to happen, but they can be predisposed to having those weaknesses. And so it helps parents to understand when it is something genetic, to not blame the child and not even blame the parent, because it goes beyond that.
So kind of removing the blame and the shame
Yes.
of having a child with learning disability, because I know that's part of the, people talk about not wanting to have a label with a learning disability, that's somehow is something that some parents would want to avoid. And even parents who have learning disabilities themselves sometimes say, well, I don't want to label my child. What's the risk of not labeling your child?
So the risk there is that your child is going to school every day full of anxiety because they can't do the work. They feel like failures. And even if they're not talking about it, a lot of times young children, they can't express it to you. They don't tell you that in words, but it is how they're feeling. They feel that shame. They feel like a failure. They feel like they're not smart. And so the risk is that they can start acting out. So if you have their self-esteem right off the top, but you run the risk that they could start acting out, getting defiant, or they can go the other way and get passive and give up, like act like they don't care. And as you go along, if you address it right away, there's so many strategies to help them learn so that each year they can keep learning what they need to learn in school. So if you address it in kindergarten or first grade, then all the rest of the time when they're in class, they can learn better and learn what they have to learn in each grade. Whereas if you wait and hope it's going to go away and hope it's really not there, then you wait till 5th grade and they're really failing at this point, or they're acting out, or they're having emotional breakdowns. They've lost all those years of learning, and then they run the risk as they get older. It's much harder to remediate and to make up for all the information they've lost and the skills. It's harder to fix their emotions. They've lived with it for a long time. And those are the kids that run the risk, actually, of getting into drugs, dropping out of school, getting into trouble with the law. So it's a huge risk to just ignore it or say, I don't want them labeled, because you end up with the risk of having them have a much worse label later on.
So I think it's important also to point out when you're treating a child with a learning disability, what you're improving is their ability to take in the information. You're not giving them information to memorize. You're saying, if I give you information down the road, I'm giving you the tools to know what to do with that information, how to memorize it, utilize it, remember it for later, that sort of a thing. So it's not a matter of just putting information in their head.
No.
It's give them the skills, give them the tools. So a lot of times what I see with that is that if you don't do that, like you talk about, it's that lack of foundation, that if you keep trying to throw in more information and they've never learned how to use the information, then it just creates a bigger pile that they can't ever get past. So that must be really frustrating for those kids.
For those kids, and it's one of the things I love and was very excited about with Mind Matters is the philosophy that you have that what we offer is help at the foundation level, so that this is where we're dealing with the actual specific learning disability. If it's dyslexia or auditory processing or visual processing, we're working to help this. We don't cure it. We can't cure a learning disability, but we can work on improving their processing so that then they can have a chance to build up the walls, which is another class, Edutherapeutics, that we offer, where we give them actual strategies and we use lots of activities to help their memory and build their digit span and help their focus. And then once that's really strong, then you can throw all that information that you want that they do at school, the reading and the writing and the math, and they can deal with it. So I just love that that's the philosophy behind Mind Matters, and what they offer is they say we're just going to deal with this because it has to start here.
So it's different in that way, I see, is it's not tutoring. It's not a matter of teaching them teaching them more information. It's giving them the skills. And before I go too far, knowing again that all kids with learning disability aren't alike, there are a lot of different variations. Not only that, it can be impacted by all those other things that I look at medically. Does a child have depression? Do they have anxiety? Do they have an unstable home situation? Do they have attention deficit disorder? Because then any of those things are going to layer on top of the other one. If I have attentional problems and I have a reading problem, the reading problem requires more attention from my head, but I have less ability to pay attention, so then it doubles, or it what's called amplifies that disability for me. So sometimes if I can improve the reading problem, it improves what looks like the ADD. By the same token, if I can improve the attention deficit disorder, it makes the reading problem get better because now I can concentrate more. So again, it's part of that ability to be comprehensive in it and say, okay, it may be learning disability, but could be learning disability plus this, this, and this, or just two of those things. So sometimes being able to throw that broad net out and saying, okay, we're not going to look just at this one little piece. We're going to say, okay, let's look at the whole individual, the whole enchilada, and then to determine where are resources best used. And again, it could be treating two things at once. And if you do that, because they both make each other worse, improving either one makes both
Right.
better. So oftentimes it's that overlap. So
I just wanted to say that that's one of the things I love about Mind Matters Clinic is that you have all these different resources, that someone doesn't come in if you think you have a learning disorder, or there's a learning problem. You don't come in and just see one person. You have the whole team as one of your resources. And so you have counselors that can deal with the anxiety and the depression. You don't ignore it. And sometimes that has to be taken care of first before they even start any academic or even foundational learning disability work. You have to take care of sometimes those emotional issues. And sometimes the first thing to be taken care of is a medical issue, the ADHD or other medical issues that you very carefully take the family history and the child's history and figure that out. And I think that is why you've had so much success with helping these kids, is because it's the whole package. We're not just doing one thing. I don't just do one thing, but we all work together. because
I think
it is
it's
so.
a perfect example.
Yeah.
So if you have a child, say like you gave the example of somebody who's anxious or depressed,
Mm-hmm.
they may have already given up, or they're so anxious about going to school they can't possibly do some of the things that might be helpful for the learning disability until you get them engaged and encouraged and willing to, because basically it's taking a risk. For a
Yes.
child that's already given up, to come back into the fold and say, okay, I'm willing to try things that I haven't tried, it doesn't seem like anything's worked before, I'm going to be willing to try again. Sometimes that's where the counselor has to say, okay, I know you're anxious, I know you're depressed, let's go through that. And if we can change that child's attitude, then we're going to get them back into the fold as far as, okay, I'm willing to try this new tool you're going to give me. Because if I give you a tool and you have no motivation to use it, it's a useless tool. But I give you the tool and you say, I want to use that tool. That's that combination that brings those pieces together. I know we've talked also with some kids who have attentional problems. And if you want to engage them in something, one of our techniques, but they're so busy being distracted, looking elsewhere, out of their seat, rolling around, then it's really tough to get any benefit out of it because it's not an efficient time for them.
It's
So it
not
doesn't matter.
efficient, it's hard to get benefit, but also we try to make them feel successful. One of our main focuses on all the treatments that we do is that even while they're doing it, that they feel successful, they feel important, they feel cared about. And if you can tell that the whole time you're going to be having to discipline them or reprimand them or correct them, then they're not going to get that emotional buildup that we also try to give as part of the program.
Right. So they're not feeling judged all the time, which is where they've probably experienced elsewhere. So can learning disabilities improve with treatment?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Yes.
Short answer. It's the right answer.
Yes. Yes. And like you say, having multiple treatments sometimes is the key. I can remember one student who I worked so hard with in first grade trying to get him to learn how to read, and this was far along in my career, so I had a good 25 years of experience doing this, and I was trying so hard and not getting anywhere and wondering whether this child should be retained, what should happen there. But the parents saw you and got help with his attention disorder, took medication. He came in and sat down with no further reading, no further instruction, and could read. It was in there. It was in there.
Trapped.
Yes. And I'd never seen that before. And that to me was just this aha moment of going, wow. He had received all that instruction, but he could not pay attention long enough to work with it and use it. And so, yes, it definitely, we've had tremendous success with different programs.
So I can use, I have a similar example kind of on the flip side. A child came to see me last week who had been diagnosed with having an attention deficit disorder, was on appropriate medication, his behaviors had improved, more organized, less distractible, all that sort of thing, but still was doing poorly in school, and lo and behold, child has a learning disability. So again, it wasn't recognized, because in the world and in medicine in particular, sometimes there's a tendency to focus on one thing, and if it's not in your cup of soup, whatever it is you want to look at it, then you say, well, it's not that. Well, sometimes that's being able to say, okay, if it's not that, what else could it be? So it's that ability to look outside what you may be familiar with, and you're right, that's what the team is able to do, which I really like. So to give people an idea what kind of approaches the clinic is able to, at Mind Matters, what have we found really valuable in working with kids with learning disabilities?
So when we do the test, the RIO, and look at where their deficiencies are, part of it is a judgment call at looking at what their main weakness is, but also what else is going on in their lives. One of the things I look at is, are they getting enough exercise? Because our EduTherapeutics program is based on a lot of activities from brain gym, crossing the midline, doing a lot of activities that activate the vestibular system. And so if the child's already getting a lot of that, say they're on the swim team, then I look at that and go, okay, they're getting a lot of that. What what do they need in addition? Or if they're doing music and dance, different things like that, then I look at, well, then Fast Forward is a program that can help kids that have auditory and visual processing problems and dyslexia and attention issues. And it's one of the ones that I like to recommend first for kids that are already doing some of these other activities, and it really sets them up for success because it's intensive and it's exactly dedicated to what the child's needs are. It gets more difficult as the child improves, it adapts. It has timely motivations built in, like all these bells and whistles and things for them to look at and points, and we have prizes, and so that's really motivating for the kids. So that's a program that has had tremendous success on helping kids improve their processing speed. And even though the program isn't working on their reading skills, many children improve in a 8-week session. They can improve a grade or 2 in their reading ability, even though we're not doing instruction, just because we're improving that foundation.
Kind
So
of like
that's
we
the
talked
first
about,
program.
we're giving them those tools, and then the information flows once you have those tools in place.
And this one, yes, this one's not actually a tool because it's more that we're making changes in their brain.
Okay.
So it's not a strategy like they would get in edutherapeutic that's, I would call a tool. This one I see more as something where we have a chance to make
To change the
physical brain changes. And then they can go ahead and use tools and use strategies and be able to learn much more easily.
So when you do Fast Forward, which I know is a computer-based brain training thing, if they see improvement, are those changes, are they going to last for a while?
They do. Research has shown that they do last, and what we found is that they often will last for a number of years and allow the child to improve in reading. And then after 3 years, there's oftentimes another big jump in complexity. And so Fast Forward has another level where students can come back and give them a shot in the arm. Let's revamp this because the learning disability doesn't go away. We've helped them improve their processing speed. We've helped improve their attention, improve their memory, but it's still a weakness for them. So there are times when they need to have a second round of it.
So like re-exercising that part of the brain.
Yes, like I need to do my sit-ups again.
So it's not something that goes away at the end of the 8-week treatment period then?
No, the learning disability doesn't go away.
Okay. But the effect or the benefit of Fast Forward also doesn't go away?
No, the effect doesn't. The changes you've made in the brain still maintain themselves, but the challenges are still there. So you've made changes in the brain and you've activated the neurons so they're sending messages faster, you've increased their attention, but because of the load, the cognitive load increases, that sometimes some more effort is needed. But no, the benefit stays.
So with Fast Forward, give me a flavor of what a child's looking at on the screen. What is it they're looking at the screen? I wish we had screen
fun.
here,
I
but
wish we had a
can't.
screen here.
Would have been a good idea.
So it's based on the concept of computer games, but instead of the concept of killing anyone, it's based on achieving. All the games have to do with exercising. So the graphics have to do with this grandma lifting weights and some other little space creature doing push-ups and this really cute guy that has a big tummy that's running on the treadmill. And they relate all the exercising to how the kids are really exercising their brains. So they want the kids to understand that what you're doing is exercising the brain. And so then they have the little activities that the kids do that were developed by neuroscientists to activate. And a lot of times they start with auditory ones, so they have little sound differences. And as the kids get better, the duration of the sound decreases and the intensity and the frequency changes and the number of sounds they have to remember increases. So even for adults doing this, it takes work. You really have to concentrate, and we tell the parents that. It may look like it's really cute and there's little bells going off and all these great colors, but the kids are having to really work hard in order to make improvements, and we watch their graphs every day to show that there is improvement. So anyway, they do these games that have to do with matching sounds or telling when sounds change. And then once they've got the auditory part working well, then they add the visual processing part, and they add in words and nonsense sounds, because that's an important part of learning to read and learning to distinguish sounds. And then they also have stories. So we work on comprehension. So they tell them stories, and they have to sequence events in the stories and remember character details. And the other one is following directions. And they start with very easy directions, like touch your blue cup. And then they would change it to, before you touch the blue cup, touch the white rectangle. Instead of the white rectangle, touch the brown chair. So they get all these language complexities built in as the child gets better and better.
Which means they have to be able to hear it, they have to keep it in sequence, and then they have to be able to act on it.
Yes.
So all kinds of different pieces of that. Can you give me an example of a child who did fast forward recently, and kind of give me a flavor of what we might see differently at the beginning of the 8 weeks versus the end of 8 weeks?
So there's a number of changes that we see, that teachers see, and that parents see. One of them is that the children have an easier time getting their homework done. They don't fight it as much. It doesn't take them as long. They choose to read is the biggest one. Parents will say, we're driving in the car here, and they notice the sign that says Sierra Hills Market. They never noticed any signs. They weren't reading anything. And now they're wanting to read. They want to know what that says. They're noticing, and print is coming alive for them. That is a huge one that parents notice with the younger kids. Also, parents say that the children will tell them what happened during the day. So you know how you're in the car and you're saying, okay, what happened today? And I don't know, I don't remember.
Yeah.
One of the changes is they'll start remembering something because the connections are being made. So you don't always see grades, ABCs at school change within 8 weeks, but those are some of the differences.
So sometimes I believe those are probably the things that are heading along that way.
Yes,
That are going to develop later. Okay. I know we also do some other things. I know we're going to run out of time here a lot faster than I thought. So can you describe again what EduTherapeutics is? So
EduTherapeutics is a program developed by Dr. Joan Smith to assist with increasing memory. And you have to know what the child's digit span is so that you can work with each child and increase it. And it works on using the body to increase the brain's efficiency. So we do a lot of walking on the balance beam and looking at different, like looking at the X, but it's all individually tailored to the child. And we do neurological impress reading as part of the program.
Okay. And I'm sure we didn't get to all the things we could have talked about tonight. There's several other options and other approaches, and unfortunately it's just too big a topic for us to try to wrestle in the 30 minutes we've done it here. So we welcome your questions. If you have more questions about learning disabilities and things you might be able to do or how you might be able to recognize it, we welcome your questions. We welcome you to contact us at Mind Matters or just drop by for a visit. So thank you very much for listening. We'll see you for the next episode.